Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Most Excellent Adventure to
Heavy Metal History.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the Heavy Metal History Podcast, my guest for this episode is Lindsay Schoolcraft. You would know her probably mainly from her time in Cradle of Filth, but we're here to talk about her solo record today. Lindsay, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I like to start off with here usually is your personal heavy metal history. I know we're going to get to talking about your new solo record, and it's not quite a traditional metal album, but I know obviously your heart is in the metal sphere a little bit. So what were some of those bands and records that you remember hearing and listening to that kind of got you into the genre?
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm an 80s kid, so I was in high school at the beginning of the early 2000s. So my my first introduction, I mean, we all, because of Metallica being the iconic powerhouse during its time, we have here in Canada this late night TV show called Much Loud, and the first thing I ever saw to do with heavy metal was Metallica. It was a music video late at night, but something about Metallica just did not draw me in. And maybe it's just needing, like, I'm one of those people who needs a strong female role model. So in high school, all of a sudden there was Kitty and Evanescence, and then there was Linkin Park, right? So that was to say, like, my first introduction to metal, and then it led to like Korn, Deftones, Slipknot. So that was very much of its time. And for me at the time, I didn't even really think of it as metal. I saw it as more of like hard rock alternative, I think is what they were coining it at the time. And I did actually, this is so funny, I first heard about Cradle of Filth in high school, and the first track I heard was Her Ghost in the Fog. And it's so weird being Sarah's friend now, because I remember hearing her vocals at the time, and I was just like, this is so cool. But I was like, I can't stand that guy's voice. If you can find a copy of this album without the guy's voice, I will listen to this, but I just can't do it because it's a very acquired taste. So that was like my introduction, and then I kind of fell off of it. Like, I still kind of stayed within that music, but then in my early 20s I went more into like kind of like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Birthday Massacre, but I had a band that was very like goth pop, electronic, industrial, but still rock. So that was kind of like that. I went down this weird path with like My Chemical Romance, and like you could almost call it emo, but it wasn't. It was something else. But then when I started studying classical music in my mid-20s, I was introduced to Camelot and Nightwish, especially Camelot's Ghost Opera and Nightwish's Dark Passion Play, which to this day is like still one of my favorite top 5 albums ever. What a beautiful masterpiece, and that was kind of the floodgates opening again, so to say, and all this metal pouring back into my life. And I really got into symphonic metal, and really into that whole, I don't want to coin it as a genre, but the whole female fronted metal, like, community, the culture, the bands and the people involved in that movement, because it was a very big movement for its time in the late 2000s. So yeah, that's my history now. Just like, and then, I mean, I always loved black metal. I kind of got into black metal around the same time, and then here we are. Almost 20 years later. But yeah, that's the history.
Yeah, it's there's a couple things you mentioned there that I want to touch on. I got into Cradle of Filth around the same time. Nice. I was in like 9th grade in high school. I think Damnation in a Day just came out.
Yes.
That is like my all-time favorite record of theirs by far. So yeah, we're probably similar to the same age, I would assume. But yeah, so it's like weird years in high school before the internet, where you're like trying to find all this music and you don't really know about other, I guess, like, around that time, like, female fronted bands were a rare thing. It wasn't very like in the norm as it is now, which is great that more and more women are into metal and bands and everything like that, and it's changed a whole lot, which is great. And I think the internet helped that out a lot too, which is good. But seeing that trajectory of like these women in bands, like, did that kind of inspire you to want to play music?
Yeah, I mean, and now I'm thinking back because there wasn't many women in metal, before the 2000s. There was a lot of women in, I guess you could say, the harder side of pop music. So I really gravitated towards like Shirley Manson
Or
and
like punk
Garbage.
rock.
Yeah, and like Brody Dahl from the Distillers, like huge influence there, and Gwen Stefani, no doubt. And
Yeah.
it really inspired me to want to sing, and um I think that's maybe where my pop sensibility comes from, and my love of pop music and a hook and a strong melody that everyone can sing along to. Because they were like the only woman around. But then when I guess in the 2000s, like the early 2000s, a floodgate opened for new metal, and there was like women taking the stage. That was just so inspiring. I was like, oh my gosh, like, hey, like this is what I want to do. Maybe I can do this.
So did you start playing music at like a young age, or when did you kind of start wanting to do stuff on your own?
Yeah, it was a young age. It was definitely, I'm a Disney kid. I Gosh, I could probably quote the Lion King backwards and front and cry every time Mufasa dies. I think that was a huge influence. And then when I was in elementary school, I was in some choirs. For some reason, my school did the production of The Wizard of Oz like far too many times. I don't know why. So I always kind of ended up in the choir for that. And my dad taught me guitar when I was younger. But when you're 7 and 8, you really don't know what you want. So that's where it started.
Yeah.
Country music too, believe it or not. My dad raised me on country music, which was really like, you're going from all these Disney classics to whatever's on top 40 radio in the mid 90s, and then country music. It was just it was great. But I think that's what has always kept me very open-minded, is the fact that like in our house, like anything was really welcomed and listened to and embraced and thought about. And my dad is a big music buff, especially for his era of rock music, like the 60s and 70s, that classic rock, like super classic rock. So having that around has just been like, it's really taught me everything I know today.
Yeah, country music was something I tried to ignore for the longest time. Having grown up in the South, it's kind of embedded in the
Oh
culture.
yeah.
But there were bands and artists that people were like, no, you just got to give it a chance. You got to give it a chance. And there is some decent country music out there. I'll go on record, and saying it. But it's not the stuff you're gonna hear on the radio. Like,
that
you
new
have to like
wave
really
country.
dig for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Dolly Parton. I mean,
Yeah.
she's like the queen up here.
She
It's
is.
incredible what she does.
Oh, she's
I mean,
lovely, and she's the reason for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
queen.
I couldn't believe that when I found
Right?
that out. I was like, wow, how much stuff is she just like kind of dabbled in through history that we don't even know about, that she just hasn't taken the credit for, because she's like, hey, this is a good idea. I want to support it.
Yeah.
And just magical Dolly Parton.
Very humble. She even in this year, she like reads bedtime stories. Like, if you're having a hard time sleeping at night, you can go online and find Dolly Parton reading bedtime stories. Like, she's a gift to us that we're not worthy of.
Yeah, it's incredible, man.
Yeah.
I went to before all this happened, I went to Dollywood last year. I think it's like a nice little vacation. I hadn't been there since I was a kid.
Right.
It was incredible.
Oh yeah, she's something else. That's one that I still have to go to. So where in the South are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in Tennessee.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I've ever been there. I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah, I moved back here like 2 years ago. I was living out west for like 10 years in California, so just had to move back. But it's one of those things where life changes and you gotta take a different route.
Well, good on ya.
Yeah. Man, there was something you said that I wanted to touch on too. Well, if I remember it, we'll get back to it. But
Cool beans.
something I think about your music. We're talking about metal influences, but I'm also very eclectic in my taste. And listening to this new record, you seem to have a lot of other influences, which you kind of mentioned, and I would actually enjoy hearing what those are besides metal, because like I kind of picked up like some Bjork vibes on some of the songs on this record, if that's fair.
Yeah.
So I would be curious to hear what your other influences are and what other artists you enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, well, you nailed it. I mean, I love Bjork. she's the reason I picked up the harp, like fully dived into it, because
Oh wow.
her album Vespertine was a huge, again, one of my top 5, huge influence on me. Really showed me what boundaries you can push and the different uncomfortable emotions you can convey through music. It doesn't always have to be happy, sad, in love, angry. It can also be uncomfortable and like really bring up those deep seated things that you haven't dealt with. And she is just, in a way, so good at expressing more than, the top few emotions we usually get from music. And that has been huge. I mean, obviously there's been a country influence, which has led into folk. I was doing some side studies in folk music when my vocal training journey was really interesting. I had an incredible coach. She's still going. Her name's Jackie McIntyre. She's here in Oshawa. And she was so open to embracing whatever I brought to her. So she showed me folk music. She showed me theater. I love theater. Oh my gosh. I mean, I might retire and do theater at some point. It's my jam. But it's not something you can do in metal, prance around on stage and act and dance and sing. Well, I guess you can, but
King Diamond would argue otherwise.
Yeah, I think Elise from Amaranth would be like, Lindsay, what are you talking about? There's been so many major influences, and I have to say, it's like, I praise the book of the Gospel of Leah. I speak the Gospel of Leah. Leah is a Celtic folk fantasy metal artist out of Vancouver, and I've always really loved folk music. Like when I went through a whole year of just studying folk, singing a little bit in Gaelic, playing it on the piano, which now is transferring to the harp, which sounds way better on the harp, in my opinion, obviously. And how that woman has melded heavy symphonic metal to Celtic music is just, it blows my mind. She's definitely one of my favorites, and I love all her albums. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. But I came from punk. Like my first band, we weren't very good. We were an all-girl punk band, like Riot Girl, very, very much in the vein of like Josie and the Pussycats meets Jack Off Jill. And
nice.
That was really interesting. I mean, but at the same time, I feel like that was my teen angst project, and it ended in my early 20s. But no, it's I love, like, I can be one of those people. I'd be happy to go sit at a jazz club and just soak it all in. I love big band. I love going, oh God, when I go to see orchestras, I cry, because it's just so beautiful. Just to feel that resonating through your body, that collective of people making that massive sound. But I think it's important to be open to everything, especially like the thing that I love is electronic music. I listen to it because I don't know how to make it. I don't understand it. And it's music that I don't have to pull apart, analyze, and think about.
Yeah.
But being open to that is, something like, I think electronic can really transfer and cross collaborate with a lot of genres and make some cool new subgenres. But I think like everything you experience, everything you hear, it's teaching you something. I'm one of those people, I view life as I'm always a student, sometimes a teacher. And being in that mindset, which has only been for the past probably the last decade, if I'm going to be real, there's so much to learn and to understand. But it's, like, gosh, I could just go through a list of a lot of really weird, obscure influences. But I think outside of what people expect of me, which is like Evanescence, The Birthday Massacre, Nightwish, Within Temptation, there's artists, there's Dimmu Borgir too, of course.
Oh yeah.
But there's also like Leah and Bjork and Vast, which is John Crosby's like grungy world music project, which is just a huge influence on me too. But anything that really just is like, when you hear it, it's like a big hug, and it makes you feel understood and not alone in your thoughts and your emotions and your journey on this world. Like even Johnny Cash does that for me. I think that, that's what music's all about, isn't it? So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think speaking of that, like for me personally, like listening to this record, there was I mean, this is me kind of trying to extrapolate, when you're listening to something, I kind of, really, I listen to everything three ways because, I listen to it with headphones in to kind of get it like really in my ears. I listen to it on like shitty laptop speakers and then I hook it up to my like nice big ass stereo so I can like really take in all the sounds and, listen to something different each time with the record.
You're testing my producer too to make sure he mixed it right. That's the producer test. That's a mixing test.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to do it because I really want to take in every part of the music. I want to see how it sounds different on everything because it always does. I mean, I've been surprised like years later listening to something on crappy laptop speakers and I'm like, why have I never heard that drum fill before on, headphones or big speakers? Like I'm just now hearing this. Like, why has it only come through, on this? But I'm digressing. My point is listening to the thematic elements, I guess, on the record, the lyrics and everything, it seems like a really deeply personal record to you. Is that a safe assumption or am I way off base here?
Oh no, you're absolutely right. Because this is like my 10-year anniversary album and that's 10 years of music.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's and I really tried to go through and pick songs that I love, but also have been hits with my fans. Like I'm kind of like, and it's no offense to it, I'm really over the song Darkness Falls. Like it had its place in its time. It was about a certain person and I was like, I'm done with it. But so many of my fans love that song. I just feel like I'd be betraying them if I didn't recreate it, it's all pretty like personal stuff. Like most of it, I think either than Strangers about really a whole lot of nothing. It's one of those like open to interpretation songs, but most of it is about some serious relationships that I've been through, whether, it's been like between love or friendship or colleagues or, whatever it may be, family. It's just like a journey. Like it's kind of like closing these 10 years and then just like, okay, clean slate, moving on to the next decade. But I put a lot of love into them. It was also, my lockdown project because like everything halted and I was stuck inside for 2 months. So I was like, well, I've wanted to get better at harp. I've wanted to do an acoustic album. Let's just do it. And I really poured a lot of my love and like my stories into it. And it was really cool and fun recreating like old songs, bringing them into a new idea and light and sound. So yeah, it's especially Worlds Away. That one's pretty fresh. And that kind of related to, something that happened about 4 years ago, but also just the current state of the world, I think.
Yeah. This is a good segue because I was going to ask about like how you worked on the record. You said, and I kind of followed you on social media and you had talked about like, working on it and having all this time. So what was the process like with, reworking or re-recording some of this stuff and then like getting it all down? Did you do everything by yourself or did you have collaborators again? Like how was the work kind of spread out?
It was a very one-woman project. I'd say like as much as I call Tyler my producer, I was more of the producer and he was actually my co-producer. He was more of the engineer and mixer. And I love Tyler. I couldn't have done it without him. And I'm very blessed. He's my neighbor. So that made things really easy.
Perfect.
Thank goodness for that. But it was, half of the songs were already kind of there on the harp. I had recreated them. I did a tour of Australia at the end of 2018, going into 2019. Then I went with my electric harp and I played quite a few of those songs. I was like, well, these versions are pretty cool. So like, let's work on this. And because of that, then I'm like, okay, well, I need like 6 to 7 more songs to complete this. So, it was long hours. I mean, all the business stuff halted. And, when the government's throwing money at you, like that's the opportunity to just get away from the business and not worry about your bills. And I was like a teenager again. And I treated it like a job, but it was like the best job in the world. And I'd get up and have a morning routine and then be like 4 to 6 hours arranging, working song by song. I'm one of those people, I do usually 2 to 3, like I do little clusters. I work at like 2 to 3 songs at a time. And then I go in and record, like lay down all the harp with Tyler and then track all the vocals and then come back and be reflective and have a think. You know, like I'm not just like, okay, it's done, there it is, like whatever, fine, bye. I'm very like, okay, I need to make sure that this is how I want it to sound, because this is going to be immortalized. Like this, I had this side note. I had this huge epiphany a few weeks ago, and I was like, wow, all the stuff we create outlives us. And that's your legacy.
It's scary.
I know. I finally had that thought, and I was like, damn. You know, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm like, I can't be half-assing anything. Like, I need to put my whole heart into this, because this is going to live beyond me. And so I come back, bringing us back down to earth right now. Head out of the introspective clouds. So I was like, I'd be reflective, go back. And then, once all the songs were together, then you can start seeing like the full picture, right? This is me going into production brain right now. And you're like, here's all my 11 songs. And actually Warn Me is a B-side from Martyr. It ended up as the last track on the album because I was trying to do a cover and it just was not turning out how I wanted it. And then I started playing Warn Me on the harp for fun. And then I was like, oh, this needs to be on this album. So, I looked at the overall thing and I'm like, okay, so where do I want strings? Where do I want beats? Where do I want, you know what I mean? Like, then you all of a sudden start to see like the big picture. And then that's kind of how it came together. And it happened very quickly, but very magically, because it was like such a fine focus on this album in a span of 2 months. And then it took Tyler about a month to, edit, mix, and master. And I'd say it was, when did lockdown start? And so April, May, and then by the end of June or beginning of July, it was done. And then I went into crowdfunding, which is kind of hard because, you just want to keep writing and recording music, but you're like, okay, well, I'm independent. I'm my own record label with the team. Like we have to do this now. It was like, damn, I have to.
Yeah. Back into the business side of it.
I was like, it was like, I really, and on top of that, it was a healing experience for me. Cause I just came out of burnout and like probably the worst I'd been mentally for my mental health in the longest time. And it was such a healing journey for me. And it really brought me back to that 16-year-old in me that first like discovered, Evanescence and Kitty for the first time. And just that love of music, that love of making it, writing it, performing it, being in it. And I felt like I found myself again. And, because when you go through that and then you're so stuck in the business stuff, sometimes you're questioning and you're learning and you're like, am I good enough? Is this good enough? And then you have this full album in front of you and you're like, oh, well, heck, I guess this is what I'm meant to do with my life. You know what I mean? So it was a very interesting 2 months. It was like this, just like from caterpillar to butterfly in 2 months, emerging from the cocoon. It was unreal.
Yeah. And I mean, to kind of go back to your other point, talking about things outliving you, you kind of, or not even kind of, you put some of yourself into this music and, having that cathartic kind of like working through everything and getting it out there and it's done and into the world. And now it's like, you kind of bared your soul on a lot of this stuff. And, after all that work and all it's said and done and you feel like you're in this good place now, it's got to feel amazing to kind of like move on and do the next thing, I would assume, right?
Yeah, no, it feels good. It was like a big sigh, like not like a sigh of relief, but like a big like, okay. It's like kind of like when you finish a book and you feel accomplished and you like, close the last page, put it up on the bookshelf, that kind of feeling. That's what it was like. It was a great experience. It was fun, proud of it. A lot of people have said that because of the circumstances this year, they really enjoyed the album. It relaxed them. It helped them calm down. It's helped them with depression and anxiety. And that's like all I really set out to do, because my music it's not about me. It's about helping other people and getting to other people. Your music is something bigger than you. So the fact that I did it now, looking back and seeing people write me, it's just like, it was a good choice.
That's not very heavy metal of you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I don't care for the opinion of elitists, so.
Yeah, it's always funny. I think, Metal has such a vast array of, ideals and
Colorful characters.
themes. Yeah, and I think every once in a while, to say the least, every once in a while it's good to have something positive out there, in the music. Just so that way it's not all gloom and doom and darkness. It just breaks up, the cliche, I guess, a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, there's a lot of darkness on this album. There's dark moments for sure. But yeah.
And that's the thing. Darkness can be interpreted in less aggressive ways, which is the nice thing about, the more gothic side of the music.
Totally. Yeah, it's my jam.
So, as someone like myself who's pretty ignorant about the harp, I know absolutely nothing about it.
It's okay.
Can you educate me a little bit on it? What are some things that people may not know about the harp?
Oh,
what's the hardest thing to do on it? I mean, what, I feel like it's like a guitar or any other instrument. Like you just have to put in the time and the work. But
I wish it was
man,
easy. I wish
looking at it, it's just like
the harp is just
what?
It's a magical instrument. It's thousands. I want to say over 5,000 years old. From Egypt, they believe it started because of a bow and arrow, like the bow. And discovering that, and there's a lyre. There's like, I'm just kind of going off of what's left of my brain in the Coles Notes version here. So there's the lyre is like the oldest instrument, and it's kind of where the harp came from. But it's evolved over the years. I own folk harps. They're more, I guess, like they're it's really a pain in the arse. Like they're not meant for progressive music or progressive metal. Anything that goes out of key, like forget it. And I say that like, yeah, I can stay in a key and have multiple chords in there, but the lever harp for the most part is set to a key. Like you can move around a bit, but not much without, I think, compromising the performance in ways. It's work. It's different. It's really, in the beginning, it was really, I have a stigma in my right eye, and it was really like, whoa, like getting that focus on the strings. And it was kind of like my depth perception in the beginning. It was so different from piano, which is flat. That was huge. But it's a beautiful instrument. I mean, I would love to one day own one of those concert grand pedal harps. That's, I think, where it's at. Like, that's where I can like change the keys and stuff. But I also, it's either get one of those or, get a grand harp and not buy a house, or buy a house. They're so damn expensive. Wow. They start at like 20,000 Canadian from what I remember.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're insane. Like a grand piano. Like a good grand piano. So it's such an incredibly relaxing and beautiful instrument. But the thing that, with the harps that I have 2 lever harps. A lot of people don't understand is it's set to a certain key. It's not chromatic like a piano or a guitar or violin where you can like move around and get everything you want out of it. It's very key sensitive. And that's been a little bit of a challenge when working with other projects and, making sure the production, like the sound, that performance captured in the studio is decent without, okay, record. Okay, great. Okay, stop. Tune, okay, hit record again, play, okay, stop, tune, and that just like to like, what's the point to like, be part of some weird progressive song? It's just been an utter headache sometimes, and that's something that a lot of people like don't understand. But I mean, if it's an instrument that you're thinking of taking up, I mean, I highly recommend it. It's super soothing and relaxing, and I play like at least 30 minutes to an hour a day. But it's one of those instruments where if you really want to get like the full experience and performance out of it, you need lessons. Like you really need lessons. And oh my gosh, I'm totally it's going to be honesty hour. I go through social media, and I mean, I'm not the best player in the world, but I'm damn well trying. And I see some people play, and you can tell they've never had a lesson. And I'm just like, no, stop, get lessons. What are you doing? Like, why, like the hand positioning and where they pluck the string. And I'm just like, oh my God, like it's my pet peeve. I'm like, get lessons. And I'm not being like, you suck. It's more like you are limiting yourself. Like you are not getting the full experience of this instrument because you don't know how to play it. And I think that actually goes with almost any instrument, if I'm going to be really honest. But it's hard when you're the performer because you don't see where you can improve, and you don't see like where, you know, you're necessarily, I guess, say making a mistake. But that's why I've always had lessons as a singer and a pianist and a harpist, because I want to be better. And when you're all thinky and just having fun in the moment, there's someone else who can show you, hey, if you accent these top notes, you're going to get like a way cooler effect or experience. So yeah, the harp is like, that's just my opinion and experience with it and what I recommend. But it's something else. It's slowly making its way into heavy metal, which is really exciting. Really exciting.
Yeah, I think it definitely adds a lot more depth. You know, I mean, you know, bands already use a lot of symphonic things. Why not go a little bit more, you know, classical? You know, kind of like Flesh God Apocalypse. You know, they definitely skew more towards like classical oriented.
They do
kind of stuff. So harp makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure if they use it. It's been a minute since
I have no idea if they do. I know that Nightwish does. I know Elvati does. Leah does. There's the Harp Twins. They're incredible. Yeah, it's really cool. It gives it another dynamic. I mean, the thing with the harp is it's something that when people usually think of it, it's like beautiful and dreamy and soft and magical and wondrous. But I also think the harp can be really dark and eerie and mysterious and sad. You know, and that's kind of more of what I'm trying to bring to the table. Well, attempting slowly over time.
That's maybe, I don't know your movie preferences, but a lot of old horror movies tend to lean pretty heavily into a lot of harp and stringed instruments, and it does give that creepy, kind of off-putting kind of vibe to a lot of those older films that I think people don't really. Yeah, and I think people, you know, I don't know how many people watch old movies like that, but
I haven't in a while. I miss them.
Man, I didn't used to really want to watch old stuff like that. And then a couple years back, I was like, you know what? I'd never seen these movies. Like, I got to do it. And in doing so, I fell in love with Vincent Price's like whole film catalog.
Oh, what a
all
voice.
Those movies. Man, let me tell you, that guy, he could chew the scenery, but man, he did it so convincingly.
Heck yeah.
I love him. But yeah, like the soundtracks were so different from what we get now, where it's like
big symphonic.
You know, yeah, symphonic, you know, electronic, a lot of electronic
like
stuff.
The Transformers, I think. I want to say it was Transformers that started that. Yeah, like there's the big, like the Hans Zimmer or the John Williams, like, or John Howard, like them. It's like, well, oh God, I love that Lord of the Rings soundtrack, To the Day I Die. Incredible. But yeah, it's more that big, polished, like epic, where I think people forget sometimes that less is more. You can strip it down and it can still be just as powerful. It doesn't have to be big and overloaded all the time.
Yeah, there's a fine line with that too, man.
Oh, yes.
There's so many records I hear where I'm just like,
why?
Man, they really just put everything on here, didn't they?
Yeah, it's like, listen, you don't want, you know, you wouldn't want 25 layers of flavor to your lasagna. So why would you do that to your music if it's not necessary? You know, you're consuming it. So I don't know. That's just me, though.
No, it's I get it, man. Sometimes it's the artist's curse. Like, you know, you just overthink something to death, and then you're like, oh, did I do too much? Did I not do enough?
And you know where it comes from?
You just gotta,
and I've seen it all these years. It comes from like thinking about what other musicians will think of you, and what impressing your other musician friends. And we all suffer from it. And the minute I start thinking that way, I say, stop, what's best for the song? And I think we forget, hey, like only maybe 5% of musicians are going to listen to this. We have to think like we're playing to 95% non-musicians who are going to love it anyways. So why overload it? Like, why, again, like I'm a very less is more person with everything: music, makeup, food, life. You know, it's sometimes simplicity. There's a beauty to it.
Yeah, that's something I learned too with my time, like working with bands, is you would be surprised. Like, it's very rare they're going to shit talk another band or, you know, be like, why aren't we doing that? It's just like, either they'll listen to it or they won't.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you're exactly right in that statement, man. I didn't even like think about that until you said it, and I was like, oh yeah, I've definitely been around people who have like said that out loud, but then when it comes down to it, they could give a fuck less what other bands are, thinking of their music.
That, or they're just trying to like impress their idol. Like there's the idea, and listen, I've done this too. Oh, we all listen, it's Honesty Hour, we've all done it, where we're just like, oh man, what if like my idol hears my music one day, I have to impress them. But I think it's funny because I've met some pretty big names in metal, and I think the most interesting person I ever met, who's been a good friend and a positive influence in my life, also happy International Men's Day to all the men out there, it's Nej from Alcest, and we caught up in Norway, got to see him live, met for the first time, wonderful human being, and he was just like, oh, I don't really listen to metal, I mostly listen to electronic music. I write and I write what, for me, and I write what comes out, and I don't question it too much as long as I feel it. I'm just like, wow, you are not from this planet. You are a spiritual being that descended here and made it work. Like, holy crap. So yeah. And I think that's so cool and important when you actually do meet those people. Like, they're not anything like what you thought. And I mean, when I listen to music of people who I guess look up to me, I'm just looking to enjoy something beautiful. I'm not just like, oh, you know what, you could have done that piano line better. Like, I've never once thought that.
Yeah, and I can't imagine like who would have the balls to actually like go up and say something like that to any artist, man.
That's
like,
so mean. Like, shut up. Like, why are you judging everyone else? Work on yourself.
Exactly. Like, yeah, who has the right to sit there and just say that open face?
It's happened to me. I won't lie. I won't name names because I don't want to be
another artist.
I don't want to be the Taylor Swift of metal. No, flying my mouth, but I have had people do it. But then I've realized years later, after like they've told me like really not nice things about what I've written or my composing, I look and I'm like, wow, you're a really sad individual who's very insecure, and you must have said that to feel bigger in that moment, but if anything, you lost out on a friendship and a good person in your life. And that's I think when those things happen, like I beat myself up for years, and it ruined my mindset, and I was like, I'm a crappy musician, I'm horrible, I'm an amateur, I'm not good enough. And then when I was like, wait, these aren't my words, and I have this amazing circle around me of musicians and artists who think I'm the bomb diggity and love me, so why am I holding myself back from my potential? And then when I was like, well, wait, what would drive this person to say these things about me, to me, like to my face, like make me cry? And then I realized it's not about me, it's about them, and that's, but yeah, like, I believe it or not, I've been in that scenario, and I'm sure a lot of people have, whether it's on a local level or a big level. But, I find those types of people, they just aren't very successful because they're very, cold and callous, and, you want to be around people that are positive and warm and fuzzy, like kind of like George from Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse, like one of the most brutal, guttural death metal vocalists on the planet, but a massive teddy bear in real life. You know what I mean? Like, those are the people I'm very fortunate to say I have the coolest circle of awesome people in my corner. So that's just kind of like, well, you just kind of like, I see why you said that, and you wish them well, and you move along your way. So if anyone's listening and you've been in that scenario, just remember, it says a lot more about them. Rewire your thinking pattern and just wish them well and cut them out of your life, because you don't need anyone telling you that.
No. Yeah, that's really smart. I mean, you can only deal with so much outside like negativity and like having that's something like I restructured a lot of my friend group, man, and it's been
good for you.
Incredible to have like all my old friends back in my life, and like they're such great people, and then I don't, like you said, I don't worry about the negative people.
Yeah.
And I've kind of said this a few times. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast before. Maybe I have to somebody else, but kind of in line with that thinking, all these people getting upset about being stuck at home during quarantine, or, still being angry at everything else out there. I think it's exactly like you said. They're upset with something in their life, or they just have no interests and so they find ultimately that they have nothing going on for them, so they just take it out on other people.
Totally. Or they don't have the tools to be happier, thriving in that moment. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it just comes down to personal reflection and willing to be open to doing stuff like that, because I don't think a lot of people are, if I'm being honest. Maybe I'm a little too misanthropic there.
You're right.
But
I can open up Twitter and say, like, you're definitely right about saying that when it comes to I avoid my Twitter feed. It's just too dark. But yeah, I mean, when this pandemic hit, anyone who was like gloom and doom and my life is terrible, I just muted, or I keep a distance with love from, and I just surrounded myself with people who are like, let's make the best of it. Let's work it out. Let's try. Let's know that there could be failures, but we're getting, especially with my new band Antiqva. And it was just like, well, we're going to try, you know what I mean? Especially with this album, we're going to try. And I just wanted to be around people who were like in that headspace of, okay, my life just got chucked to left field. That came out of nowhere. And now I have to make the best of it. And I think having those people in your circle is just so important. I mean, it's been vital for this year, if I'm going to be honest.
Oh yeah. I got rid of pretty much all social media except for podcast stuff about 6 months ago, and it's been incredible.
Oh, good on ya.
I don't even understand why people have it anymore. It's weird when people ask, and I'm like, I just don't have it.
Facebook is hard too, especially with the divide. I'm sure you've seen The Social Dilemma, that documentary.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm kind of okay, because actually, I know we're we're going in every direction right now, but
it's fine. This is what I love to do with podcasts.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, it's all music related. This whole thing happened with the U.S. election, and I saw a friend of mine made a post, and of course, we always just assume something, and I think assuming is the biggest toxic thing we can do as humans. And I reached out to try to get a phone call because I love this person so much, and I know they think differently than me, and I wanted to really know where they were coming from. So I assumed they were, oh my gosh, what are your parties again? Republican and is it Democrat? Yeah. I assumed they were Republican. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into this with someone I love so much. I may find out that they love Trump. I don't, but that's fine. I don't think many people do, if I'm going to be real. But, and I was like, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to find out that my friend is thinking totally different than me. But then we actually had this beautiful, over voice message, 2-hour-long conversation. Turns out they were in one of the, they support one of the sub parties. They think this way. They hate, they're against socialism. They were just, they went off and said something, but they were talking about the Great Divide. And I just, I think that was so important. And then I was telling people on Twitter and stuff don't lose your friend over an angry assumption. Just all of a sudden block and delete them, cancel them out of your life. Pick up the phone and have a conversation, because you may learn to think in a new way and you may learn something new. And it's just that I think that's so important. It's not worth losing people you love over politics. I never have thought that is especially here in Canada. I know people from all parties and we all get along, I mean, we've never had someone like Trump in power, but anyways.
No, I agree. It's especially where I'm at. It's so divisive right now. It's kind of just incredible and sad at the same time to watch. And I mean, you're exactly right. Having those conversations is extremely important. And I can even vouch, my best friend, his parents are heavy Trump supporters, but they are literally the nicest people in the world.
Yeah.
They're not racist. They don't hate people because of religion, sexuality, none of that stuff.
No, I get it.
But it's just it's a generational thing.
It is.
They only vote Republican. They don't care that, Democrats or whatever they believe. It's just that's how they were raised.
Yeah.
So that's why those conversations are important, because if you just look at them as being Trump supporters but not knowing the kind of human beings they are, I mean,
we failed.
It goes a lot longer way.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So it's important to keep that open-mindedness. Wow, we went so far from music.
Well, let's it's good. It's good. We're gonna wrap up here soon.
Cool beans.
So I guess looking to the future, if there is one.
Hey, come on now.
Hey, it's gonna be a weird future. Let's put it that way.
I can't wait to have designer masks.
Oh man, we're getting there.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody already has like custom ones where I work, and showing off your personality. It's cool though.
Can't wait.
I kind of like it. I feel like Shredder half the time. Like,
I know. I feel like that one character from Street Fighter. I can never remember how to say her name. She always had the buns in her hair. I want to say Lynn, but I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sorry, I can't remember everything, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, who can? But I guess kind of looking to the future and your next projects. You already mentioned your other band, Antiqva. I guess quarantine's still going on. Things are still kind of weird. What does the future look like for you personally? Obviously, it doesn't seem like anybody's going to be doing shows anytime soon. So where does that leave you?
Definitely writing, recording, releasing, because that's all you really can do right now. I mean, obviously, everyone knows I'm heavy into the business. I'm doing a lot behind the scenes. Moving into 2021, I'm very excited. There's a lot of just exciting things for me personally, when it comes to my name and creating not just music, but other things, which is super exciting. But yeah, I released this album, and I've been asked to do some one-off singles with some incredible singers. So that's going to slowly trickle out next year. And that keeps me sane. I think, doing a long day of business and then going and hiding in my room for a few hours every night to write music is so important. And once those are sorted, I guess to say, or solidified, because, it's a process. You can be working, you can have like 10 open projects at once. It's how us creative people survive, I think.
Oh my God.
But we just, fumble through life as permanently exhausted pigeons. But yeah, the next big thing, I've done things in such a way in my personal life that I'm able to take off, I think, February to April next year to finish writing and solidifying the album for Antiqva, which is my new like black metal band that has like more of a symphonic chamber setup. And
nice.
I'm beyond excited for that band. It holds so much promise. On top of that, I mean, I have a band with someone who's like a brother to me, Zenoir. He's known best for being the lead screamer in Cradle of Filth. There's few people in this lifetime that you meet that you really have like a deep soul connection with, and he's my homie, and it just works. It's magic. And we're both very persistent, hardworking people with a vision and respect and just such a great collaborative effort. And thanks to the lineup we have, like, I'm just beyond excited for that band. I feel like it's a time, it's something I've wanted to do where it's like very classical, but very black metal. And yeah, that's 2021 for me. I'm really like, I have a countdown on my calendar until like I've done all my other responsibilities, and then I can just dive right fully into finishing this album.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to that because I enjoy both of your guys' work. So when I saw you guys were doing something together, I was like, oh man, this could be something pretty special here.
That's how I feel every day. Cheers.
Yeah, Cradle of Filth is one of those bands that I feel like kind of are still under the radar, and people are really sleeping on them, even though they have like 4 records.
They're incredible. They're so good live. And I mean, listen, I am like the best PR they never had. I get it. But like, they just... It's
hard being in Australia too. Let me put it that
Lonely
way.
Island, yeah. But man, like they are God's gift to metal, honest to goodness. If you want a really cool, different thing for metal, check out Cradle of Filth. They've done what they've done, and they've done it well. And also just wonderful people I get to call my friends, But yeah, worth checking out. Zen's quite the he's a very talented individual. I'm trying not to be biased, maybe I am, but he's like, as someone who's like with his words, his vocal style, his lyrics, all the digital artwork he puts out, he even makes jewelry now. It's just beautiful. There's so much thought put into what he does. So he's worth checking out too, just as an artist.
Yeah. I've seen, I think I've seen a couple of his covers that he's done for bands recently, or maybe last year.
Yeah.
I don't know. Time is hard to keep up with sometimes.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay, where can people find your stuff to support you as an artist, as everybody should be doing right now?
Cheers.
You know, it's more important than ever. And where can people follow you on horrible social media?
It's not that bad.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
If you need a break, I get it. I've done that too.
No, it's important for artists.
Oh yeah. So you just go to lindsayschoolcraft.com. Everything's there. If you want to, buy a CD, I appreciate it. It's schoolcraftshop.com. And for anyone that wants to check out my new band, you can go to antiqvaofficial.com. Antiqva is spelt with a V after the Q, not a U. I think it was like godsend. It was one of the first plagues. He has this thing. He's loving this pandemic. Let me tell you, he's not once complained about it, and he's on the CDC website like all the time.
Wow.
What a guy. Like literally, I when I realized he hasn't once complained about this pandemic, I'm just like, you're the only one, dude. I think it's fine if you find illness fascinating, fine. I just don't think it's a great idea to romanticize it, especially this year. But anyways, it made a great band name.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. Band names are hard to come up with nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
Oh, it took us forever, and I think it was literally the first suggestion he had, and I was like, I like that. It looks like antique.
Yeah.
So
my suggestion for people out there: start naming your bands after Magic the Gathering cards. There's so much untapped potential there. I'm telling you.
Yo, legit. Okay, so funny story before I let you go, because we could talk forever.
Yeah. Oh, you're fine.
My partner taught me Yu-Gi-Oh cards this year, right?
Oh, nice.
And like it's like the hardest card game in my opinion. Especially jumping into it now because it's evolved for like over 20 years. And I started noticing that when I was like learning cards and stuff, I started noticing some of his songs in his band were named after Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And I'm like, I thought y'all were geniuses, but no. And it was just, there's like band names. There's a lot of really amazing band names out there. You just got to look for them. But if you need some inspiration, I think card games are the way to go.
Oh yeah. Especially high fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
You got to.
Oh, heck yeah.
Well, Lindsay, thank you for doing the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You've been somebody I've wanted to have on for a couple years, so this is really cool to finally get you on.
Yeah, one of honestly you're in my top 5. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!